I mean, I really liked it. The main guy put himself a little too much in the story sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
his name was
I don't think he's the guy
Justin.
that directed it either. He was just
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh,
Some
I
guy
thought
named
he did.
Director is John Foy.
John Foy.
So
yeah.
it wasn't that guy. Okay, I'll give it 8 then.
But the thing is that
I'll give it 8.
He may have just because it almost seems like what I can't remember. Was there ever a point in time in the movie when they went to Philadelphia that all three of them were on camera at the same time? So it almost seemed like they were shooting their own footage, and the guy maybe
That's
just
why I
put it
thought.
together.
Oh, yeah.
He may have
I
just
thought they
directed it, but
were
it may have just
There
been
was
that.
Justin, who was the main guy. You know, found the tar paper in the street and everything, and then there was 2 of his other friends.
Yeah, the one guy was kind of like the photographer, and then the other
Right.
guy was just kind of the internet guy they did.
Exactly. So it was the 3 of them. I know they went to his house, knocking on his door. He never came and answered. They even got some of the people that lived in the town knew him.
Yeah.
You know, and he totally never came to the door. Called his mom.
Well, that was they
Yeah.
called his mom, and that was the other cool part of it was that like the town was really like the neighborhood was happy to help him out and stuff like that and work with him, and it was kind of a mystery that was surprisingly they solved it, and it was almost like it ended up being I don't want to give it away, so
I can't believe how many of the mysteries they came up with solutions
solved it,
that
yeah.
made sense. So
yeah, it was I think it was really well done. I think it was you're right. He does put himself in. I think if you can get past maybe the first 30 minutes of the movie. Where a lot of it, because there's a lot of parts they put into where it's like, because even though they kind of bring birds up in a certain part, there's a part where they kind of
the
talk
birds thing is kind of cool if you were to rewatch it.
Was it okay?
No, if you rewatch it, there's so many references to birds.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them pretty subtle. So, but it was a connection between.
I think
him
it was.
and the
I think it was
pilot.
more of. I think it was more of to put you into the head of Jeremy in the movie more than it was to solve the mystery of Toynbee.
I thought it was more like just to show like this weird connection between them. Like
That makes sense.
But anyway, Solomon, what was your pick?
My pick was Machete Maidens Unleashed.
Machete Maid, and why don't you tell us about what it is?
It is basically about not so much grindhouse films, but exploitation films.
Well, you could say Grindhouse films because
Grindhouse?
I mean, it's
They
granted
were
the movie
B
ends
movies.
up the movie ends up being a documentary on Roger Corman,
That's true.
but
Well, it's the B movies of the 60s and the 70s.
They were shot in the
The
Philippines,
Philippines.
exclusively, I
in
think.
the Philippines, and just basically it showed how film was cheap, human life was cheap, and you know, you're in the Philippines. It was kind of anything goes attitude there, and so they shot there, and it started off with horror flicks, wanting to shoot horror movies, and then everybody kind of started getting tired of that,
Yeah.
you know, particular genre, and then it turned into these exploitation sort of women fighting for their lives.
what was
and-
it was the women in prison kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It was always like women behind bars and
Mm-hmm.
women in prison or like what was it, the Big House or
The big black mama, white mama.
Yeah.
The big house.
Nudity, lots of nudity.
and then there was like they had they went into the creature features a little bit
Mhm.
and then it became the horror and then it was, but you know it's kind of think weird to think. I always seem to forget how graphic some of the horror was back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
We started to think that like stuff with like Us, like Saw and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, even though that's the 70s, but no, you know, a lot of the earlier stuff was just, you know, you think, God, it wasn't that graphic back in the day because you always think 50s, 60s is
Right.
like Leave It to Beaver.
Exactly.
But then you realize that there was like there's always going to be a seedy underbelly to every era.
Right. But wasn't that before the rating system really started to take hold?
No, I think
it was like after the rating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like well, after the studio code and stuff.
Mhm.
Like you couldn't even kiss someone for too long without like breaking some kind of rule.
Wow.
but that was TV though, wasn't it?
No, that was movies. Like It's a Wonderful Life actually had to cut the kiss scene between Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed, like after
Really?
the phone, because it went on too long. Like there was a certain number of seconds they could do that.
Huh.
Yeah, there was
This is
a
too long, Jimmy Stewart. Too long.
I can't do Jimmy Stewart.
No. Please continue.
I'm
with
gonna
Jimmy
make,
Stewart.
I want to do Paul Lynn. There we go. Hey everybody, this is Paul Lynn.
He always jumps to Paul Lynn.
That's the only thing I can do now.
Solomon jumps to Cosby.
This is the Cosby version of Simple Sam.
Do I have,
You don't have an
a
impression
standby?
yet.
No. Oh, Marvin the Martian, I guess I do sometimes.
Yeah.
but Not now.
But yeah, so it kind of ended up being. I think I liked the movie, because it was interesting because I don't think I knew that much about Roger Corman.
Right.
But I did when I got done watching the movie. I read up on it a little bit, and people were saying that a lot of it's similar to the Roger Corman bio movie.
Right.
I forget what it was called, and a lot of similar stuff. But it's set up in segments because every movie was kind of like it was like, all right, here's the big dollhouse. Now here's some actors from that movie, and they're talking about it. And then it almost kind of ends up being that. I think the problem that it flowed into was it kind of becomes the same thing over and over again.
Right.
Whereas like, all right. We had the big dollhouse, and then that's like it's similar because it has Pam Grier and another chick from the same movie,
Right.
and they're in another one that's similar, So that's kind of like I think the problem I had with it, but
I didn't get a real feel of what was happening there. It was just like, here's a movie, here's a couple of snippets about it. Here's another movie.
it kind of almost seemed like they had maybe like because I was really kind of hoping to learn more about the relationship that the filmmakers had between Marcos, who was the president or general at the time in the Philippines.
Oh.
Because he ended up creating
I mean,
martial
they
law.
mentioned him on the poster.
It was
Oh, they do?
So, come on. Yeah, but he's barely in it, really.
Yeah, they talk about maybe like 20 minutes of it is about him. But maybe it's just pacing. It could have been just
well, I
pacing.
mean, because they talked about him and his wife because they wanted to start this.
Well, the wife part was interesting. Like when they talked about Marcos and his wife, was it Esmeralda or something?
Imelda.
Imelda, and it was interesting because of the fact that it was at first you're like, oh, that's kind of cool because she wants to set up. She was like really enamored with Hollywood, and that these movies were coming to the Philippines and filming, and that she wanted to create a Filipino cultural center. And by creating that, there was like, and they're like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Everybody was happy about it because they were trying to create like a Cannes Film Festival, but
Right.
Filipino Film Festival. And it ended up being that there was like a building collapse in there, and the second floor fell on the first floor and killed some workers. And then there was like the urban legends that said she just said, all right, just throw a concrete down and cut the hands off. So like whatever, like just set it to a certain level and then just chop the hands off and cover it again. I was
Yeah.
like, that's so crazy,
Yeah, whatever body parts are sticking out. just
Whatever body
chop
parts are
off,
sticking out,
smooth
do it.
over.
And then she's like, and they actually have an interview of her. She's like, that's such a lie. But
Right, that never
that was kind of the
happened.
interesting part of it. But it ended up being mostly about Roger Corman and making B movies, and which was interesting too because I like the culture of the drive-in. I kind of wish it kind of comes back,
Oh, yeah.
but with home movies, it's not going to come back.
Right.
With home theater, it's not going to come back.
The one thing I found interesting about the film, other than I really enjoy B movies, it's one of my staples.
Plus,
really
most
do.
of the things you review.
Yeah, I like B movies. The one thing I found very interesting was the Philippines at the time was a political hotbed of, things going on. People, fighting back and forth. The government and everything. Government saying, "Bring your guns here. Do this. Do that." And then you have, these American filmmakers coming in, shooting these very political sort of, freedom films.
Yeah.
And, the government going, yeah, go ahead, shoot. They don't even know what's going on.
Well, I think they knew what they're going on, but I think they wanted.
They got money.
They wanted the influx of money to come
Right.
in because.
Business first, law second.
Yeah, that's what they wanted the most was they wanted the influx of money to come in, and
Right.
when you have Hollywood coming in and they're willing, well, even if it's B movie Hollywood, and you're willing to throw a bunch of money into it, he was like, what was the one story the guy says he's like, I needed 2 helicopters at a certain time, and he's like, why were you late? And he's like, well, sorry, we were doing a bomb run on some like civilian town or something.
Right.
It was just like, what?
Yeah, and they had like bribed the helicopter people. It was like,
Yeah.
It said something like, "Oh, the helicopters aren't feeling that well today." and
Yeah,
stuff like
he's like,
that.
if you gave us a little bit of money, they might feel better. You know.
yeah.
But yeah, it was those that was the kind of parts of it that I liked, and it was almost like I think you could have lumped all of the like big dollhouse women behind a barn section together because a lot of actresses were the same.
Right.
Same thing with it, and then but the other thing that was cool was the fact that you did learn a lot about. I didn't know this, but I guess I always knew that Roger Corman was a producer. He never really directed that much.
Right.
But it was that he got a lot of talent from the Philippines, like Filipino directors, and a lot of the older movies that were directed by Filipino directors. So it was like the Big Dollhouse, a lot of those women's exploitation films, and then all of the horror movies and stuff like that they had in there were all kind of done by Filipino directors, and that was always kind of cool. And then the end of the movie ends up being about the Philippines movies themselves. Of course, your favorite, Wing Wang.
Wang Wang. His little chicken heart couldn't take it.
His little chicken heart couldn't take it.
who was a midget who did
Well, he
James,
wasn't really.
Oh, he was 2 feet tall.
Yeah, he was 2
who
feet tall.
did James Bond
And
parodies.
it was always James Bond parodies. Yeah.